Throughout her career, she has helped individuals grow, build high-performing teams, and shape organizations that succeed with purpose and lasting impact. As Vice President of People and Shared Services of Douglas Machine Inc., Vicki leads with deep commitment to people and purpose. With years of leadership experience across executive roles, board service, business ownership, and community involvement, Vicki has seen firsthand how strategy and service go hand in hand. She's passionate about helping people and organizations reach their highest potential. Beyond her work in business leadership, Vicki is a dedicated mentor and advocate for personal growth. As a cohort leader for the Women's Leaders Network, she walks alongside female professionals, helping them build confidence, navigate leadership, and grow in their careers. She has also founded the Masterpiece Initiative and a faith-based initiative dedicated to mentoring young women. Vicki believes leadership is a profound responsibility, a chance to serve, empower, and make a lasting difference. With that, it's my honor to be able to introduce to you Vicki Jodsaas.
Thank you.
Before she speaks, I'd like to pray.
Thank you.
Lord, thanks so much for today. Thank you for Vicki. I pray that she is able to lead us well today, give her a clear mind, the weight lifted off her shoulders, and just thank you so much that you've given her the great gifts to lead in her businesses and in her family, and just thank you so much that we can learn from her, and just faith forward in general. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for that. I love how God works, right? So we were listening to the comedian, and it was hilarious. And I was laughing, and all of a sudden I thought, oh no, I have to clear my mind. I have to be ready for this. And then I was laughing, and I was like, oh no, I have to clear my mind. And then I come in, and you say, help her clear her mind. And I'm like, well, that's perfect. Thank you, God. Thanks for speaking to sharing that message. I'm so grateful to be here with you today. You know, it's such a pleasure to be able to be together, spend time together, learn from each other. And as we think about living and leading like Jesus, that's a profound responsibility, right? And such an honor and such a pleasure. And I think as we think about that for ourselves individually, and as we think about that for our organizations, it's something that's really worth spending time and being intentional about. So I'm going to ask you to do something. I want you to close your eyes, and I'd like you to point north. And keep pointing north. And now open your eyes, and let's take a look at each other. Are all of you from Fargo pointing that way, and everyone else is like... Does that happen in organizations? Do we know where we want to go, and we're like, this is where we're going? And all of a sudden, we look around, and what are people doing? One's going this way, one's going this way, one's going this way. Does that happen? Yeah, and what is that like in organizations when that happens? When you know as a leader so clearly this is where we're going, and this is what we decided, and all of a sudden we're going different ways. It's hard because we can get so clear. As individuals, I can say, you know, I want to live and lead like Jesus, and I can be working on it, I can be intentional, and all of a sudden life gets busy. And life gets busy over here, and I get distracted, and I knew I wanted to be going north, but all of a sudden I'm going this way or that way. So we're really going to talk today about, you know, how do we be really intentional as individuals and organizations to enriching the lives of others or to serve the purpose that we have. When I think about that, one of the little things I do for myself is I do what I call a signature day. At the end of the day, when I think about my day, if I go through all the steps, the decisions I made, the people I interacted with, how I did things, would I be proud to sign my name on the bottom of it and say, that was a signature day? That's the kind of day that would make God smile and say, well done, my good and faithful servant. And so as we think about this and as we go into this idea of, you know, how do we lead in these ways, I really ask you to think about how are you being intentional in your personal life? How are you being intentional with your organization, and how are you being intentional with your community so that you have the ability at the end of each day to say, that was a good day. God is smiling with that. We're going to spend some time talking about enriching lives with the Faithful Foundation, and we're going to hit on a couple of different things. As we lead into this, one of the things I would ask is, who is here because faith is important to you? In part, that faith is important to you. Who is here in part because you want to make a difference? Yeah. Who in here could say, I have a story in this life that I've lived and with the organization that I serve where we did that? Right? Every one of us can raise our hands, and that's so important. So while I'll share a story with you and I'll share some ideas with you, we know that there's lots of right answers. So I'll give some perspectives on things. I would equally ask that whether it's here and you have questions or you want to share an idea or on a break, connect with people, because we are so much better together when we learn and share ideas about what we can do to live this one wonderful life that we have and have the impact that would make God just so proud of us. So we're going to talk about these things. We'll talk about foundational elements, like how do we get really clear on what is north, right? How do we make sure that we have a clear understanding of our purpose, our what, our why, our how? How do we look at, as an organization, embedding that in all of the things we do through values-driven people and business practices? How do we serve as leaders to set the model and the example for our organization so that everybody wants to and is excited about and passionate about moving in the same direction? And then I'm also going to share a little bit about one of the things that we have at Douglas, which is about enrichment services, so that if we get really clear on our purpose, or really clear on our mission, how do we build out not only our business and people practices, but how do we build out the other services that we provide that truly will have the impact that we're looking to have with people? So we're going to start with those foundational elements, the why, the what, and the how. Getting crystal clear on what's our why, what is our overall purpose, and then our what is what do we do that equips and enables us to be able to live out that purpose. And then the how do we work, how do we behave in order to do that really, really effectively? And when we can answer those foundational elements, it helps get us clear on what our mission is. At Douglas Machine, our mission is to enrich lives by providing differentiated packaging, automation, and services. Our why is to enrich lives. In 1964, when the company was founded, Bud, Vern, Paul, they were praying about what are we going to do with this business? How are we going to serve? And they had this vision of having at least 6 people that they could provide a livelihood for them and their families and enrich their lives. Douglas Machine now has, collectively with Douglas and IPM, over 800 employees. The mission of the founders has lasted and endured through over 60 years to say, how do we serve? Our mission is to enrich lives. We are crystal clear about that. Our what is differentiated packaging, automation, and services. And we're great at it. I mean, we're world class. People around the world look at and want to have our packaging machines. And that is cool, and that's exciting, and that helps us grow. The reason it's so exciting is because it gives us the platform to enrich lives. It expands our platform and our ability to enrich lives. So we can look at that for those employee owners and their families, for our customers, for our community, for our vendors, anybody that we're interacting with. We have the opportunity to enrich lives. And when we say that, that can mean a lot of different things to different people. So we get pretty specific in saying, so what does that mean to us? How do we hold ourselves in a place that we are excited about how we enrich lives and we're being intentional about it every day? This is a model that we put together and we use. I'm not going to go through all the pieces, but I will share a couple of things. So when we talk about enriching lives, you can see one of them on here is spiritual, and that means striving for inspiration, meaning, and purpose. There's different things that we do. We have a care team and a prayer team, and I'll talk to you about that in a little bit. If we think about people striving for inspiration and purpose, one of the things that we did a couple of years ago is we said, how do we know that this is meaningful work for people? How do we know that people's values and their purpose is aligned with who they want to be and what they want to do? And we said, what if we did a session for every employee on meaningful work? What if we helped them to think about what are your values? What are your skills? What is your purpose in life? How do you want to contribute to the world? how does that then, how do they think about that for the work that they're doing? And it was outstanding. We had people that were listing purposes and how they were impacting others, and it was different things for different people. Sometimes it was about goals, sometimes it was about relationships. Before we did this, I said, okay, you know that if we do this, we could have somebody that says, my purpose isn't here. And we have to be okay with that. And as a matter of fact, if our mission is to enrich lives, we should feel really good about that. I was out walking around the production area a couple of weeks after we had done the sessions with all different employees, and I had a gentleman come up to me and he goes, Vicki, I feel really bad. I was meant to be a nurse. I'm in assembly. And what was so beautiful about that is he was crystal clear. He had these life experiences, he had these values, and he wanted to be a nurse. I was happy for him. Like, that is what he wanted. That was his purpose. Now, that only happened with one person, but when we want to enrich lives, we have to be careful that that's really what we want to do. And we understand that our businesses can have some impacts by that, and we have to be good with that. So in the area of spiritual, we do a lot of those things. In the area of community, again, purposeful, we have a Douglas Foundation that we're able to contribute to the community. We have a benevolence fund, so if we have employees going through tough times, they can ask for that. We have volunteer time off, so we pay people to volunteer. Those things happen because we're really clear about our mission. And so I think as you have the organizations that you're in, the family that you're in, and individually, it's really powerful when we get just that crisp on who do we want to be, and then aligning the pieces around that. Note too that I mentioned, if you have questions, ask questions. You don't have to wait till the end. You can certainly jump in if you have questions along the way. Sometimes it's just like right there, so just let me know. We also have our values. So our why is to enrich lives. Our what is through differentiated packaging, automation, and services. Our how really sets the guide for how is it that we would want all employee owners to work? How do we create that guidance? And you can see up on the top it says, the core of our values is abiding respect for biblically based principles. It's on our website. It's on the walls in the building. It's a statement of fact. Vern, Bud, Paul prayed about the business. When things were tough, they prayed about how to make it better. When things were great, they prayed in gratitude. But they were very intentional in praying and having things founded based on biblical principles. For us, that means conducting business in a manner that's legal, moral, ethical, and we're really intentional about that. It also says for the faith-based spiritual life of every employee, owner, customer, supplier, we are a very welcoming organization. It doesn't say somebody has to believe or not believe. It says that we are going to welcome everybody and be respectful of everybody. This morning, when we looked at the passage for the day around Peter, and it was really talking about, how we lead with gentleness and respect, being founded and recognizing that we want to respect and welcome everybody, it means we walk alongside people. And we treat everyone with care, and we treat everyone with love, because that preamble is all about love. How do we care for people in a way that we're enriching their lives, that they want to be a part of an organization that they can be equally passionate about and really make a difference in the world? The values, each of those have behaviors that go with them. So you can see a value of servant's heart, right? We possess a never-ending desire to serve and support others. If you think about the organization that you're in, if every single person was laser-focused on that, what does that look like? How does that help us solve problems, make decisions, deal with tough times? If every person says, I possess a never-ending desire to serve and support others. With that, we have behaviors that are listed under it. With that one, we happen to have 7 behaviors that hit on a lot of other things, but it just makes it really crystal clear for everyone to say, this is what we expect. This is what we expect from our employee owners. And we'll talk in a little bit about how we align that so that not only is it what we expect, but all of our people practices are centered around it. And that speaks to importance. With this, I would ask you, how many of you have values in your organization that are stated? Take a moment, if you would, and write them down. I'm so excited that you have things to write about. What happens in organizations when leaders are crystal clear on the values? Can state them, can recognize them, can talk about them with others? What happens in organizations like that? Yeah, they follow them. Other people see it. It emulates out. It gets bigger. It gets bigger. Leaders, we really start there. It's like making sure we really understand what our values are and we know them so crystal clear that we can speak to them. We talk to many of our leaders about you should really have the descriptions of the values memorized. Not because it's an exercise, but how can you talk about something that isn't that clear in your head? And so getting really clear on that is really the foundation for being able to live out our values. So we talked about the why, enriching lives, the what, amazing packaging machinery, and the how is our values. So that is north. And if everyone knows what north is within an organization, it's much easier to get everybody pointed in the same direction. And to be consistent about it, because we didn't just say it one time, it's something we put in place and do all the time. Another of those key pieces to get us pointing in the same direction, if we really want to live and lead like Jesus and be consistent in that approach, is through servant leadership. So we are very clear also on that our style of leadership is about servant leadership. Our role is to serve the people in our organization, to set them up to be successful. It's to drive a wildly successful company and grow a successful company, to expand our platform of enriching lives, doing it in a way that we're serving our company, our employee owners, and community. And so we have how for this as well. So how is our values? We also have a how for our leaders. So our leadership qualities is really our success profile for what does leadership look like to us. We have 4 of them. These also have behaviors within them, but I'm really going to just step into what are some of the behaviors associated with that first leadership quality, which is live Douglas values. One of the things I love about this, and you'll find in every organization, people have stories. So when I had started at Douglas, one of the things I was fortunate to do is Vern was still at the company, one of our founders. And some of my favorite times are when we would just go sit in his office. And he would talk about leadership, and he would talk about how we serve people. And he would say things to me like, we should walk alongside people. And I'm like, yes, we should walk alongside people. We should walk alongside people and serve people. We should be approachable and accessible as leaders so that when times are great, we're cheering together. When times are tough, we're approachable and accessible, and people are coming to us because they want and know that we're going to work through things together to help ourselves be better and help the company be better. And so there's so much about, the things that we do that I can so easily tie back to the way that it was done through the founders of the organization and how we want to really keep those pieces in place. Live Douglas values. The first behavior that all of our leaders learn about in Live Douglas values, do you recognize it? We talked about it this morning, Mark. You talked about it in your servant leadership session. Corinthians, familiar. Yeah. Who wouldn't want to have leaders that exhibit the 8 behaviors of love? It's the first behavior of our values. We also want leaders that are looking and building up the self-esteem of others, generally caring for employees. And so by creating that expectations for our leaders, they can get excited about that. And anybody that comes, whether they're applying to the organization or they're in the organization applying for a leadership role, they know that these are part of the expectations of leaders, that we will care for and be genuinely interested in the lives of others. The last statement on here, our highest standards for modeling our values, it's at the core, right? We all, whether it's our board, CEO, president, leader, Everyone needs to be really crystal clear and hold ourselves to the highest standard of modeling those values. And that's when it means something to people, because we can do that consistently. There are so many stories of leaders that have chosen to step in and help people through things. We had an employee owner that lost a baby unexpectedly at just a very young age. They stepped in. It's like, how do you walk alongside them? That employee needed to be gone clearly for a little while from work. But a leader that says, how do I think about when they come back? How do I help them with that transition? How do I help their team? We don't know, does this person want to talk about it? Do they not want to talk about it? What's comfortable? But how do we create an environment where everyone is really caring? We had an employee that was contemplating suicide and had shared it with a friend and had also chosen to share it with their manager. It was a Sunday. The manager wasn't working on that Sunday. What do you suppose that manager did? Of course, he came in, right? He came in, he sat down, they had a conversation, he connected him with some services that we have available. He also called, who I'll tell you about later, our life enrichment coordinator, who also came in on that Sunday and spent the next couple hours with this young man. And they did that because it's the only right thing to do, right? But it's also, if somebody is going through something that tough, they don't call a stranger. They don't even want to call like an EAP program, because that's a stranger too. So when things are tough, if we've created those relationships, they want to call their leader, because their leader is one that they know is there to help and will have a perspective to be able to not only care for them, but provide them with the resources that they need to give them the advanced care that you need in scenarios like that our leaders aren't equipped to provide. There are so many stories. I mean, people get married. They invite so many other people from work, right? Because they want them there. They have a baby. They're sending pictures of the baby. I mean, it's just about creating that connection. And I know you have a lot of those things in your organization as well. So when I say there's lots of right answers, I encourage you to share those stories, because it's those stories that inspire us to do good things, to give us one additional example of like, oh, maybe I could do it like this. So I want to hear stories from you too. So outside of this session, whether it's today or connect with me any way you want, I would love to hear the stories about what you're doing in your organizations to make a difference, because we'll learn and grow from those. So our leadership qualities is the other part of our how. We have a how with our values. How do we behave? How does every employee, owner, really live those out? How as leaders do we serve? And what does that look like? And how is that ultimately serving our purpose as an organization and every individual's purpose that they have for their own life? So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, because this is like the tactical, here's all the things you can do. But I can't leave it out because it is so important. When we think about how do we have a direction like North that everybody can point to that endures, that doesn't change when one leader changes, or 10 years go by, or 15 years go by. And it's really by making these things a part of who we are as an organization and embedding them in all of our practices. Because if they're embedded in the important work that we do, they last through time. So when we think about our business and people practices, and again, I won't hit on all of these things, but it's pretty much aligned with everything, right? So when we talk about strategy, we start with what's our mission? What are our values? What's our 2030 vision? What's our department cascaded vision? And how is that informing where we go? What can we be doing to continue to live out our values? Our meetings, every company meeting, every leadership meeting, every department meeting starts with, what do we have to celebrate that's in alignment with our mission and our values? We spend 20 minutes at the beginning of every extended leadership group meeting, the first item on the agenda, saying, what things do we have to celebrate that are aligned to our mission and values? Who do we want to recognize? We have 77 leaders in the room. 20 minutes is not enough time. So we have people that then email the stuff that they didn't get to when we have to stop at the 20 minutes because there are so many things to celebrate. And what happens when you're an organization that is celebrating things? It impacts people. It's something they want to be a part of. And when we celebrate our values, we're recognizing the things that are good and we're encouraging the ongoing effects of living out our values. We also do things like in the facilities you can see on here, our values are up in the lunchroom. Some organizations, you put the values up, but that's the only place they go, right? I tell you when you start, I have them on the wall, and then we're good. And it's so much deeper than that. It takes so much more intentional effort to truly live those things out. We still have lots of learning to do. I would say we're doing a lot of things right. We still have to keep doing more things right and taking away other things. So it's just this constant dance of saying, how do we best serve people and live out our mission and our values? We also see it in things where we contribute to the community through the Douglas Foundation. We say, what are the things that we want to have monetary contributions to? And we do things like employee match, so we're making sure we're hitting on what's important for our employee owners as well. When we are intentional about thinking about all these things, and there's more, right? We could spend 2 days on this stuff. But it's really saying, what are all of the ways that we can have it be a part of who we are? Values-driven people practices. So with this, and I won't hit on all of these either, but if it's embedded in everything that we do, it's really things like when we post our jobs. In our job description, we have that people are living, we have part of your job responsibility is living these values. In our hiring process, we have behavioral-based interview questions tied to our values. In orientation, we talk about our values. When we move into development, we develop around our values. We have things like, we have multiple leadership programs, and one of them is Douglas Leadership Academy, and people apply to go into Douglas Leadership Academy. And with that, we look at performance reviews. In our performance reviews, which is also a people practice, 50% of somebody's review is based on values, 50% of it is based on performance. So when we look for who's going to be included in what sorts of things, those are pieces that we look at as well. And then even as we look at recognition and awards, we do employee awards each year where anybody can nominate anybody else for living out our values. And we go through, it's the most joyous time. And it's right around Christmas, which is fun. But the whole senior leadership team reads every nomination. It's online now. When it wasn't online, it was like a stack, right? But everyone reads every one of them. And we look at, of all of these great things, like how do you choose the one in each of our values and in our mission that we would recognize? And so, again, keeping it in front of us in different ways. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you about is enriching lives. So we used to have a corporate chaplain. We have a corporate chaplain. We used to have a position called corporate chaplain. We had it for decades. Does anyone have corporate chaplains? It's a paid position at Douglas. It's been there for a long time. In conversations with Vern years ago, one of the things that we talked about was if we want to be accessible, if we want to be approachable, then if somebody's new to the organization and we say, hey, you should go talk to our corporate chaplain. How engaging is that? Right? Corporate chaplain. What if somebody doesn't have a belief system that's aligned with that? And we said, if we're enriching lives and we're walking alongside and caring for people, then we have to make sure it's approachable and accessible. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about our enrichment services, and I have some other material that I can send to you if you want to reach out to me on this. But when we think about corporate chaplain, we said, maybe we need to take and pivot that a little bit, because corporate chaplain isn't going to be appealing for everybody. And we want to care for everybody and be there for everybody. And so we said, let's make that role a life enrichment coordinator. and that role became a life enrichment coordinator. Approachable, accessible. Jim, who's this wonderful, amazing man, he walks around the halls, he talks to people, he's connected with people, because when you're connected to people, if things are tough, it's easy to go to somebody. He's a pastor by trade. He's a life enrichment coordinator by title at Douglas. And in his role, he's everybody's friend. He prays for people, he connects with people, he celebrates with people. Whether somebody believes, doesn't believe, it doesn't matter. It may not even come up. But if we can walk alongside people, and much like earlier when we talked about when somebody says, like, where does that hope come from? How do you answer that? When people bring things to Jim, he'll say things like, would you like me to pray for you? If they say no, he says, okay, and then let's talk about it some more. And then he goes back in his office and prays for them. But he's there because he's serving people. We had, and he does so many other things. So having that role, and if you have the opportunity to have a role like that in your organization, I just really, really encourage it. In that role, you know, he's there for celebrations. He's there for difficult times. We have a care team, and that care team, they put together blessing bags, and they're called blessing bags. If somebody has a baby, they get a blessing bag. Has a little onesie, a little baby-sized onesie, has snacks, has water, has some faith-based materials on, you know, new babies. If somebody is having surgery, they get a blessing bag. If somebody has a death in the family, they get a blessing bag from the care team. And the 1-year anniversary for somebody that's had a death in their family, they get a card from the care team saying, I know this is a hard day, and we care about what you're going through. And so we have those pieces in the care team. We also have a prayer team. It's not anything anyone has to be a part of, but people can opt in to be part of the prayer team. People can put prayer requests in, and it's confidential, and the prayer team will pray for them. And then we also have things that Jim runs, which are called affinity groups. And those affinity groups, that's saying, of all the conversations we're having and the things we're hearing from EAP, what are the things that are the biggest challenges that people are having right now? One of the things that had come up, and this is something that can happen every year, but there were just some people that were really struggling with grief. And so Jim put together an affinity group, and it was a grief group, and invited people to come. And there were some people that said, I'd like to come. We had one gentleman that had lost a son, and he said, it's too hard. I can't be at work and have this conversation and be okay. Like, I just am at the place that I just need to get through this day. He wasn't ready, but they had one-on-one conversations. We had another gentleman, he had lost an adult daughter, and they were just, it's so hard, right? And he decided, the person that worked at Douglas, to go to the affinity group. He happened to be the only person there that day. And Jim was talking to him, and he said, you know what, can I bring my wife? Jim goes, let me see. He came out, we talked about it. He goes, hey, can he bring his wife? And I was like, of course he can bring his wife. Like, they're grieving, they're going through this together. Those two were the ones that were in the affinity group month after month after month for about 9 months, and said to Jim, not only did you help us through this, you saved our marriage. We would not have made it. We weren't making it. It wasn't going well. So when we know the things that people need, we can put things in place to serve them. Jim recently put together an affinity group for foster care and parents that have adopted kids, because they're struggling with stuff. And somebody over here knew somebody over here who also had a foster child and said, hey, can I talk to you about that? Like, this is hard stuff. This is great stuff, and we really want to do this, but this is the hard stuff. And so they put together an affinity group on that. And so when we think about those different opportunities that we have, it really gives us the foundation to continue to build out programs, how we serve people, how we connect, how we stay engaged, to be the organization that we want to be, which is an organization that consistently enriches lives of all of our employee owners, our communities, and our families. And when we can do that, it affects who we are individually as well, right? There was a while ago I heard a statement that said, the best way to reduce stress in your life is to be the same person everywhere you show up. the same person, be the same person who you are when you're by yourself, when you're with your family, when you're with your community, when you're with the organization that you work with. And so knowing for me, enriching lives has just been a core of who I am. I did a mission statement first when I was like in my 20s, and in there it was dedicate my life to serve and support others. Like I'm just really clear about who I want to be. And to be able to be at an organization that feels the same way is an absolute pleasure. So again, we have lots of stories, and I want to leave time, so if we have stories that we can share with each other, questions that we have that we want to share with each other, that we have the opportunity to do that. And so what I would ask you to think about is, of the things that we talked about today, and again, they're a glimpse, they're pieces and ideas, and there's lots of other right answers, but if you were to choose one or two things for yourself, for your organization, what would those be? That at the end of the day, if you did that, you'd say, this was a signature day. God smiled, and he said, well done, my good and faithful servant. So take a moment, just think about that. I always encourage people to look at themselves first, right? We have to feed ourselves to make sure we can help the organizations that we're in. So certainly take a moment to do that. Yep, did everyone hear the question? No. Mark asked the question, have we ever had a leader come in from outside the organization, and then how did we bring them into this, right? So yes, and recently, and 6 months ago, and a year ago. Fortunately, when you grow, you get to add great people. Most of our leaders, because we have a lot of leadership programming, come from within, but we have some that will come from outside the organization. But I would go back to those people practices. So when we hire, do behavior-based interview questions based on the function of the job, the leadership qualities, and the values. So people know about it when we're hiring, because we'll say, these are the things that are important to us. And many times, savvy interviewers have also looked at your website, right? And so it starts there, because we want to choose people, but we equally want them to choose us. And they have to know who we are to decide if they want to choose us. And so it starts with the hiring process, then it moves into the orientation and onboarding. We have something called new leader assimilation, which is a series of sessions that every new leader goes through. One of the first ones they go through is servant leadership. So it's a quick dive into what does servant leadership look like to us through the lens of our leadership qualities and all of the associated behaviors. We ask them to rate themselves against them and have a conversation with their leader to say, we don't expect you to be great at all of these, but know that these are important, and a way to get them embedded is to think about them and rate yourself. Know that you'll also see them in performance reviews, and every 2 years you'll also see it in a 360. They go through servant leadership training through Triune Leadership Services. We have a leadership excellence program, which is a 10-month program with coaching that goes through specifically our leadership qualities. So we're really intentional of, if this is important to us, we have to provide people not only with the behaviors, but what are the skill, knowledge, and abilities that they need to be able to truly lead in that way. So that, for us, that's how we do it.
Your 10-month leadership program, is that in-house or is that government?
So we do both. So we do the servant leadership training, and people can do it either in the community-based program through Triune Leadership, or we also do it in-house. So we give people a choice, because what we don't want is to have it seem like we're having people choose based on, like, I'm choosing a faith-based program or a secular program. So we say, there's this kind, and you can, involve others in the community, or there's this one, because we have to give people options. We don't want to force beliefs, right? And so we do those, and then the 10-month program, Douglas Leadership Excellence, is an in-house program that was developed around our leadership qualities. Good questions. Any other questions?
Sure. You said the best way to relieve stress is to be the same person everywhere you show up. Can you say more about that?
Yeah. Well, it's a quote I heard somewhere, so I don't have any research on it. But what spoke to me about that is sometimes people feel like, and in faith would be an example of that, right? Sometimes people can feel like, I go to church and I have this faith and I talk about it and I'm excited about it, but then my family isn't as into it, or my organization that I'm in, I feel like I'm supposed to be like this instead of being like this. And we're of the belief that if you're walking alongside people, you're not evangelizing, but you're caring about people and you're living the way Jesus would want. So if that's important to you, and you can do that in your organization, you can do it in your home, you can do it in your personal life, it helps create that alignment. What other questions do you have?
Do you mind if I add to that?
Please do.
So one of the things we also do as leadership at Douglas is the values, for example. We invite the whole company to say that as senior leaders, we hold ourselves to the highest standard, but we also should hold us to the highest standard. Meaning if you have any evidence or any reason to believe that we're not living it inside the walls of Douglas or out in the community in any way, because we represent Douglas just by default. When you choose to be a leader, you're representing that company. You ought to call us out because you deserve better than that. So
Yeah.
we allow it to be that way as well.
I love that. So for context for this, Joe is the president of Douglas Machine. So I appreciate that. And one of the best servant leaders I've ever known. Other questions? What are some other things that you're doing in your organizations? Things that you see that you say, you know, this is something that people can consider. I shared several examples with you, but there's so many more. This doesn't require too much of a level of bravery because we're all friends now. Please.
We just actually finished, well, we have one left next week in Omaha. But every 6 months we do a road show to make sure that we get to all of our teams.
Yeah.
We have Bismarck, Grand Forks, Fargo, Minneapolis, Omaha are our big markets. And we go, and this session was all about our values. So we have
Love it.
That's high track, honesty, integrity, trustworthiness. But we spent, the executive team went out and each of us picked a topic and we talked about it.
Yeah.
How does that impact your day to day? And, spent 2 hours kind of just talking about what our values are, how they should shape us as the people we are, and how does that align to our core mission of creating a better living. So that's something that we've kind of really embraced, like making sure we get out to everybody twice a year to be able to, just refocus on what we're there for.
Yeah, I love that. And what's the response from people when you do that?
95% of it is good. Sometimes we have had feedback like, oh, you guys, the leadership team's getting on their soapbox and talking about, blah, blah, blah. But, you're always going to have naysayers, but it really centers it back to why we do what we do.
Right. And the beauty of that is how you respond to that gives you just another opportunity in a difficult situations to demonstrate who you are, right? Because it's always going to happen, but then it's about how we respond to it. And I think that's, one of the keys when you say, how do people respond to it? When you say 95% of people, it's meaningful for people. And the fact that you dedicate the time to do that is so important, and it has lasting impacts. That's a great example. Who else has an example?
I have a question for you.
Please.
As a company, would you ever change the values or change the words as you grow, develop, will those values ever change as far as meaning, wording, things like that? So it's easier for them to comprehend, but more relatable?
Yeah.
I mean, does that?
Great question. Actually, in 2018, we did a refresh of I think it was 2018. We did a refresh of the values, and we had people weigh into it to say, where do we have duplication in wording? Where do we have things that we don't think make sense? Where can we add clarity? Where are we missing things that we would want to add in? And so I don't think any of the descriptors change, but we were open to changing them, but some of the behaviors changed. So I think it is good to have them fresh. It's not something that you do every year. It's kind of like a vision. You might have a 10-year vision, and you revisit it along the way. But these things should endure. Right.
If they got skin in the game, they're part of making these values and the change and stuff, the buy-in will be amazing.
There's a human principle, right? We own what we're a part of. Yeah, and so having that involvement. Excellent.
Well, we've run out of time. Thank you so much, Vicki.
My pleasure.